Welcome, everybody. It's so great to see so many people here on a gorgeous long weekend, Sunday afternoon or early evening, depending on where you are. So I'm Sean Killingsworth. I'm the host of Second Sunday Readings. Been doing this for a couple of years now online, I guess since the beginning of the pandemic. This used to be a series that was in person in the East Bay of San Francisco area. And it was very small. And then when the woman who was running it kind of retired from the whole situation, she said, "Hey, Sean, why don't you do it?" And I said, "All right, I'll do it." So I've been doing it for about 2.5 years. Before we start the actual poetry, I just wanted to actually ask the poets if you could share with us what you have been reading. So we have Koss, we have Michel Cassidy, we have Yael, Valencia, Aldana. And so I'm going to ask Yael what you're reading, since you're going to be last up to the mic today.
Well, I am reading a new book called Otherwise by Julie Marie Wade. If you have not read her, you need to read her. These are lyric essays that are absolutely genre bending. That's sort of her specialty. And she just has a really lovely touch for language and quirk. She's one of my mentors, and she is a queer South Florida writer. And this is brand spanking new otherwise.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Linda, what are you reading?
I'm reading Kelly Sather's. I'm rereading, maybe for the third time. There she is, Kelly Sather's short story collection that dropped this week.
Hey.
And Small in Real Life. It's awesome. These are killer short stories. I like how the poets are like, I'm reading prose. And I was lucky enough to see some of these stories as they grew into themselves, and they hold up read after read. So
nice. All right.
Yeah.
Recommendations. Koss, what about you? What are you reading lately?
I just started A Girl, a Woman, a Teacher, a Poet by Candace Kelsey. And she's a brilliant poet. And she is a wonderful lit citizen and does a lot for promoting other writers and queer writers and writers of color. And I respect her a lot. She's a fine person.
Oh, awesome.
So I recommend any of her books. She's been churning out books. This one is available from Alien Buddha Press.
Oh, that's an interesting press. They publish a lot of people that I actually follow on social media here. Thank you for that recommendation. I've recently been reading a lot of different things, kind of all over the map. I picked up ballads by Sharon Olds. I was reading Deaf Republic by Ilya Kaminsky, which is one of my favorite, really, really moving books. I was reading Only by Becky Faust, and kind of everything, a bit of everything. And oddly enough, I picked up Blake's Poetry and Designs at a secondhand bookshop, which is really out of my genre, but it leads to a lot of interesting kind of wonderings and thoughts, which I think it's fun to do when you pick up something that's not your norm. It takes your mind in new directions, which can be really rewarding. All right, so now that everybody knows what to read for the rest of the autumn, I'd like to start with some poems. First up to the mic will be Koss, who is a queer writer and artist with over 220 publications in journals such as San Pedro River Review, Beaver Mag, Anti-Heroin Chic, Petrichor, and many, many, many others. They had work in Best Small Fictions 2020, Bending Genres Get Bent, and Diodes Beyond the Frame. They've received numerous Pushcart and Best of the Net nominations in poetry, creative nonfiction, fiction, and art. Find out more about them at koss-works.com.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And it's such an honor to read with you guys and to see some familiar faces here. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to read mostly some short poems, and a couple of them are lighter poems about work. I write a lot of doom and gloom poetry, but I thought that Sean could probably use some sort of funny work poems given what your situation is right now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I was recently laid off from my job, so I appreciate that very much.
I'm also going to read a couple of ekphrastic poems, and there's a content warning because a couple of these are about grief and suicide. I had a loss. And you can cut me off if I go over. I tried to time these so that they'd be around 17 minutes. This first one is called Loss. It was published in Rogue Agent. It's about hyperacusis, which is a hearing problem, but it's also about other kinds of other kinds of loss and other things. My ears in perfect asymmetry here select their mystic spiral pairing, proof of order, God's in-skull amps, blasting traumas clatter, a pan, a pot, a deafening, cacophony of kitchen dread, one ear deaf, genetic gift, what tempt ringing might it hear in windless skies, musical spheres accessed through spirals, twin longing of geometry. This next poem is called Hugh Sung. It's a prose poem that was published in Red Ogre Review. She listened with her cyclopean eye to what the umbers had sung when their baritone hues leached light from each low note. Not a linear song, but the past present spent in the everyone, where one might not utter what an ancestor lived or might do tomorrow or today. Colors, throaty spectacles plot certain unseen rhythms, even cicadas fail to drown. To know a thing is to hear the drum of scent, touch the chamber of its stillness, and feel its wisdom in your fingertips, the split of your tongue, and in your toes' faint ringing. Here's a job poem. This is an interview poem called Core Values. And this was published in Outlook Springs. She reads you a list of their core values, 2-word pairings, all shallow. Then comes the test, and you have to pick only one, the best one, the core value that speaks the loudest to your character, your being. At this point, the interview is getting personal, so personal. You could almost be talking to a friend or a therapist. You might even want to sit on her lap. You choose grow or die and add, it is scary. Wrong answer. Another bombed interview over values. Maybe you have no values, yet none of the word pairings make sense. They are just cartoon balloons arbitrarily hung in the nebula like paper moons. They are slogan-like, but not slogans. Void candy, gobstoppers, jobs not gotten. You decide to make up your own values that you might shout like a cheerleader in repetition while twirling ecstatically over the gym floor. You bundle them with your own business methodology for entrepreneurs. Born to lose, shitter ricochet. Must we pretend so hard? My cat farted. Allenda, Lamenda, Hibachi. Snatcho, the secret Mark's brother. Day-old crotches of underwear rise out of the ashes. I'd really love a sandwich right now. My application is in the mail. Good night, sweethearts of the rich, the clever, the indescribably successful. And if you've had interviews like that, I'm sorry. I've had more than one. My next poem is also a work poem. It's called If William Burroughs Were Your Secretary. And this one was published in Outlook Springs and was a Best of the Nut nomination last year, I think. You would make him send you a monthly report of his activities in order to keep tabs on him. He would write back. Many things have happened since we last communicated. Communication is an encoded script crammed in a glass bottle, blown ass out of a gnarling pop-bellied, pop-eyed toad into a dried-up sea of confusion and corruption. It shoots through the dead air and splats unbroken into a mire where it waits patiently and indifferently to be reamed up the eager anus of a frantic bureaucratic bungler, after which it is voided as an original thought. End of report. You would also notice that the typewriters were disappearing and wouldn't ask them to get your coffee because you'd be afraid to drink it. Months would pass and you would get behind in your work because things that would typically take place in an office, things that a secretary would normally do, like filing, Xeroxing, and addressing envelopes, wouldn't get done. You wouldn't ask William Burroughs to type your correspondence because you'd be too afraid. If William Burroughs were your secretary, you'd appreciate me. I wrote this when I was a reluctant secretary at U of M Hospital. Yeah, I wrote it when I was much younger, actually. This piece is a sad piece, and it's a version of it was published in Diode, and I wrote it up north in Michigan in a cabin, and it was Mother's Day weekend, but I didn't know it was Mother's Day when I wrote it. Rescission 9 months in, Mother's Day weekend. Will you be okay alone? You asked. Yes, I mumbled. Didn't know you meant forever. You backed away out the door. Crab walked backwards like a ranonid, reversing down the hall as if we'd never met. Back down the stairs, steady, your full feet of memory, stepped onto the sidewalk backwards, into the brick entranceway splattered in deep red paint from your neighbor's crazy, angry boyfriend. The paint peeled itself up and disappeared. Traipsed backwards towards the barren tenement, happy, smile enormous, waving at the lurching, leering gray woman in her blue sack dress who smoked over the rusty garbage can. Smiled at the greasy, spindly Norwegian carpenter with trembling, smiling dog and fenced-in yard, who rarely spoke. Backward further to your tiny red car, its dangling tape bumper hoisted itself up, bumped itself out as if it had never been hit. Plucked your keys from your pocket, no rummaging, remembered right that where they were as if your memory had never been wiped by shock treatments. Unlocked the door and started the engine, reversed and drove backward all the way to the pond, content as if your children had never been taken, sat at the picnic table near the pond's edge, smoking, admitting the sun as if the moon's nocturnal sadness had never smothered your nights, nor mother's wound laid bare. Enjoying the summer's warmth as if a kind mother's soothing breast had never deferred to winter's bone, as if you had never left your sandy South African home, as if the home were still a home. Enjoyed the liberty of your smoke as if no body lading, as if no body missing, as if no body, as if never postpartum depressed, as if you never ever thought about death. Your eyes closed, easy, dream slipping. You drifted to South Africa through knobthorn trees, waving to your oppa who never died and the monkeys who never stole your ripened fruit. You brightened at the sight of your nanny who never left you to be a Sangoma, her brown eyes smiling. You nestled inside her woven backpack, lingered a bit, then escaped, eased like wind past your father, hand wagging, teeth still intact. You floated towards your mother who sat alone in her green darkened room. Without a second thought or word, you dashed into her womb as if you had never known the cruelty of women or men, or been shamed, beaten, estranged, gay, shocked, touched, cut, drugged, persecuted, humiliated, stoned, wounded, anxious, sick, lonely, loved, torn, lost, poor, ruined, born. You crawled into her familiar void. Warm black burst open, siphoned you from this, you a seedling, innocent, into your gush of light. Well, thank you. This is called Conversions. I appeared in your suicide dream. and it was published in Spillway a few issues back. I tried to spoon you in our sleep. You were curled on the dirty cream floor like a snail in mist, nil, too far gone to care. I wanted to tell you in your dream not to leave me, that my breath would also cease. You then emerged upright in an ivory bath, paired with the musky, ape-like man, palms hard against the tiles around. You on the short end, him on the long side, leaning, tendons stretched against the wall, with your ear pressed hard as a conch, a chamber a kind God might sound. Your eyes concave, silent bodies angled awkward, your back a blockade, the bone tub drab. My body hovered nearby like a specter, thick tongue, throat jammed, mute, marking the distance between, around, with my two dull eyes stuck in my head. No baptisms, cleansing, ever sex in the drained hull, only the past, the future, and the present road into a null. Your back-to-back Hatmare, dream witness, paralyzed. A black van parked outside, displaying its tangle of wires, its jaw propped wide open. Thank you. This is called A Modern Kind of Highway Death. It was also published in Spillway. I could be the dead dike on the highway, frozen to pavement, stiff as a skull, its ocean drained to the bone, when no one answered their phones, the record cold night in 2014, when my car died and burned on the freeway. The world you see and don't is in flux between connections and short circuits. They all sat on their couches, fingering their phone screens, all filled with emojis, fleeting, oh my God, LOL distractions, waiting for the next random thing to stir them. Ringers off, the snow forms a hull around my corpse, barely covering my skull. My silenced eyes drift into the nimbus through which the headlights glow. Thank you. This is one of the last things I wrote. It's not the last one I'm reading today, but feel free to cut me off if I go over. It's called Storm, and it was published in San Pedro River's last issue, San Pedro River Review. It has numbers in it, but I think I'll skip the numbers and read it without the numbers. It's a sort of strange list, extended list poem divided into sections. Storm, she, the steady thrum of rain to count on, if indeed you could trust a thing. The thunder rose closer as a lover might in half sleep, just as dangerous. The flashing light through the pillowed holes, a way hope might blast, then fold into the dash of night. The trees, be as they are, erect and sturdy as a Matthew Arnold directive, not transcending, yet transcending. No one remembers that poem. Snow, she. A sublime silence interrupted by wind's ruckus, the trees nonchalant in their chill of gun limbs. Be as they are lots of lovers and productive in slumber. The crusted blanket, too, imbibes a season. Funnel, she, orgasmic in her violent twirling, even the trees unsettle themselves, their boughs spread open, ready. What once was, a fabrication or just an astrological sign, Aries and Aquarius spin in and out of the grizzle. Earthquake, and she opens her jagged maw to your sky. Encore. That's it for that one. Thank you. This is an acrostic poem called The Tourist, based on Joan Mitchell's City Landscape 1955, which you're welcome to Google. It'll pop up if you want to see what the poem is about. This was published in Westchester Review. In the city that isn't a city, titanium Paleolithic planks cling to each other like stuck gum, smashing defeated rainbows beneath impasto heaves. There are no heavens in this city. Candied drips defy logic, while betraying what lies waffle between layers. We all get to train through this metropolis wreckage, some of us with sticky brushes, some of us with eyes plunged deep in lint pockets. There was no mistaking the awkward pitch of skyline, slivered through the mind's eye for lack of distance, or the clumps of toy cars and their box-eldered bug wads, snapshot while spread-eagled over the bus rail on Avenue D. Thank you. This last one is a shorty, and it's a grief poem about my grandmother, and it was published in San Pedro River Review and then an anti-heroin sheet. Grandma, I haunt your home. Years later, the lavender in your drawer sings ghost. How can you be so still? And how can the grass be grass above you, just down the road from here? Your silver hair encased in silvered blue. I shadow in your frigid chair, and my nails have ridges just like yours, and my hair now shivers silver, and someday too, the grass will be grass above me. And that's all.
Thank you so much. Such beautiful work. I am so grateful to you for sharing it with us today.
I'm so grateful again to be here and for you all to be here with me.
See, this is the benefit of stalking people on social media. You get them to read at your readings and everybody gets to know their work. Okay, thank you again, Koss. All right, next up to the mic is Linda Michael Cassidy. She writes criticism and reviews for venues such as the Rumpus, Electric Literature, Heavy Feather Review, and Tupelo Quarterly, where she is senior reviews editor. For many years, she was a contributing editor at Entropy. Her writing appears in Rattle, Catamaran, Tahoma Review, and many others. She is a metalsmith, installation artist, and teacher. Her story collection, When We Were Hardcore, is forthcoming in early 2024. She holds an MFA in visual arts from California College of the Arts, another in fiction from Bennington, and a third in poetry from Vermont College. And in case that wasn't enough education, she also has a JD. Her story collection, I already had that. She lives on a houseboat, which is extremely cool in Northern California. And you can find her online at lmichaelcassidy.com. And I think Glenn will put all this information into the chat for you. Thank you, Glenn. And Linda, you're up.
Let me unmute myself. Yeah, so I'm speaking to you from the hull of the houseboat because it's really noisy out today because I think it's the last warm day, maybe. So things are going wild out there.
I think the Blue Angels are out there.
Blue Angels, 2 parties. It's crazy. I'm not going to say much of anything about any of these except for if they're a little location based. Maybe I'll let you know because they're kind of all over the place. So thank you, Sean, for having me. Thank you, friends, for being here, friends and family. I'm going to start my timer because I don't know. This first poem is set in New Mexico because we do have some Talseños in the house and one literally in the house sitting right here. And the title is the first line. Fat Bear Week, and once again, the internet goes wild. My daughter calls from a cabin in the mountain town that raised her, tells me bears are on the upstairs porch of the studio, which is really just a treeless treehouse. Or maybe coyotes, she says, but the poops are small. And I say, excuse me, you went to hippie school. Remember all the time spent collecting owl pellets? How can she think coyote and bear scat look the same? There are berries, right? That's the cub. They've been coming to the porch for years. Ooh, babies, she says, and I shut that down. Do not go near them. And she says, ah, like she's funny. I know how much she craves the sweet and that she's holed up there all along getting over a broken heart. But I also remember several mishaps involving a failure to factor. A gas stove, an icy spinout, a bag left unbuckled on a crowded train to Rome, and then that heart of hers. I mean, when isn't pump the brakes good advice? And I recall the autumn of the backyard bear, in which we did not call fishing game, when she was away in Italy, starting her big life, while we stayed at home, wondering how something that massive could balance on such wispy branches, just taking a nap, and how someone so young could be off across the ocean, living in a new language. The mama bears put them aside while they gather fruit, so whatever you do, don't go near them, regardless of cute, regardless of their fluffy paws. One time out there, I smelled that year's bear, just nearby, the odor wafting decay and wet fur, historic stink, annual return, claw marks on the garbage bins, a tuft of fur snagged on the railroad ties of the corral, a huff. The next day, someone else's car door pummeled in over a forgotten to-go box. In the end, we all just want to survive, landing gentle between magic and danger, between forage and starve. Okay, next, we're in Philly. All you need to know is the Mutter Museum is the College of Physicians' archive of body parts. Some of you are nodding, which makes me happy. That's probably all you need to know. To the Mutter. The day after my mother's surgery, she sleeps and sleeps, so we visit the medical museum to look at other body parts. In a side room, in a vitrine, on a bed of cotton, submerged in a fog of fluid, rests a brain. Dyed blue, it's the color of the sea, right after a storm, when the sun is there, just out of view, trying. When she wakes, my mother will sip dark blue from a small cup, the doctor watching for it to seep from the hole in her neck. With its peaks and valleys, the cotton, the unnamed liquid, the brain makes a landscape. The placard says, the folds allow for maximum brain space per skull. When we finally visit, she lies small and translucent. Drips of denim-colored dye spot her gauze-wadded necks, her lips edged with midnight. Okay, hope that wasn't too gross, but that's kind of my jam. This is kind of everywhere in the water. It's Iceland, Canada. The title After Drop refers to those of any of you who are cold water swimmers or like ever were lifeguards. After drop is the way when you pull up like a live body out of the water on a rescue or what have you, the temperature of the body it happens when you cold water swim too. The temperature of the body will continue to drop for a period, and that's what after drop is. Okay, after drop. I walk and listen on a day of no swim. Not a rest day, but a just had 2 skin samples taken day. My headphones could be ear-held conch shells, yet unable to offer subsurface glide, drift, and lull. The story tells of an Icelander whose fishing boat rolled, pulled under with all its crew. I imagine the way a person would wish for death long before the creep of hypothermic haze. After watching his friends fade and sink, Gudegar swam for 6 hours, only to meet a wall of lava rocks that would not be scaled. So he swam some more. When I went in Lake Superior, I wore a wetsuit. Strange and soft, I floated beyond the stoic Midwesterners, weekend beery, taking their dips. A shock that the water held no salt. Finally, he emerged and barefooted his way over miles of volcanic scree, found a cottage and knocked on the door. Thawed, the Icelander was called national hero and medical oddity. His survival unnerved the scientists, so they set him in a vat of icy water just to see, decided he was built like a seal. My coldest swim was in a glacial lake in Canada. I was small and knew nothing of trouble. I did not think of warmth, thrilled to swim in former ice. I recall my father waving me in and my refusal. What I mean is, I'd never seen water so clear. Him having to barter another day's longer swim if I'd just come to the goddamn shore. He begged and finally threatened all to get me out of the water. And how after, when there should be warming, the chill yet continued to grow. Okay. Oh, another acrostic poem. So this is after a Rothko, number 4, 1960. Rothko, I'm sure everyone's a fan because he's amazing, but he's the guy that does the big, giant, there's a bunch of them in the MoMA, color fields. And this is called Chromostereopsis, number 14, 1960. It's a prose poem. The edges of the Rothko vibrate. They must, even though I cannot go visit and sit on a black leather bench before it like an acolyte. I long to bathe in its maroon buzz where deep crimson field meets navy abyss, soft-edged against the perimeter. I crave that luscious headache, so bold I hear it grating and digging into my brain, neurons frizzling the way dogs recoil from high-pitched horns, like dehydration or caffeine lust, or that time I broke my glasses and let my phone guide me home, toe on the brake, driving one eye shut, the lens in my pocket. Ooh, sorry, my timer keeps running away from me. Okay, I'm gonna skip that one. Okay, oh, another prose poem. All right, we're back in California. Golden State, prose poem. I will eat the 2 mochi that I picked up at the fancy grocery store near my office. I will eat them before I try to eat the salad. I also picked up a Caesar, like all my many years worth of Caesars from there. The mochi fridge is a new thing, right there at the checkout with flavors like chai latte and turmeric, because this is California, baby, and lavender lemon, which probably looks good, but might taste like a sachet. So I got the blood orange and the pistachio looking the way you'd expect, but the blood orange being pinkish purple inside, lovely against the orange casing. All this because I had a lip biopsy on my lip this week, one that revealed nothing except that my face doesn't like lidocaine, as I'm still puffed and numb 4 days later, having taken double Benadryl and used all the ice packs. I even tried one of those quartz roller things that reminds me of assisting on a job when we printed the famous artist's work outside on the street. The paper was massive, using a steamroller and old blankets. I mean, compare that day to now. Mochi gone, sad little salad by my left arm, antihistamine haze clouding my desire to open the file I've just been sent because of the chirpy "good luck with this one" on the header. But also, compare this day to the one I've never had, and maybe one where I get a call that the doctor needs to dig further into my face, or I lose this gig where I'm paid to read all day, or maybe a day where I discover I married the first fiance instead of waiting for the second, and never came back to California and its incessant cheer and good fortune. Thank you. Okay, a little lighter. Also, because my husband's in the audience, he's the first and only fiance. That was just poetic license, just FYI, in case he's panicking, or my daughter. I know the speaker, whatever. It's kind of nowhere. It's a little medical, but less gross than I usually am. Okay. First, do no harm. This is set in Taos, but I don't know if that's really relevant. Anyhow, first, do no harm. What I really want to do is write, said my surgeon, a comment unsolicited and unwelcome. A screenplay, he said, while on hold for a CAT scan approval, as music came mincing through the speaker. I believe we all must reach for our dreams, said he. except I was the one awaiting the scanning, the slicing, the stitching, and he was talking about suspended comas of the future. I would have preferred our bonding include some science words, something obtuse and out of reach, and specifically about me. If he sent me the manuscript, as he surely would, I'd have to skip my follow-up appointment, maybe move out of town. See what we're doing time-wise. Whoa. Okay, back in California. Okay, so I have a bunch of poems that start with a poem that, and they're after a form that C.D. Wright, the goddess C.D. Wright, the poetry goddess C.D. Wright uses. So you'll hear that, and that's like a nod to her genius. Okay, a poem that begs you to stop calling it Frisco. In the cafe where the beats used to hang, a man holding a tiny stuffed penguin asks if he can sing in two tones for me. Like Tuvan throat singing, I say, without thinking, and now we are conversing, and it's all my fault. Yes, he says, and he sings, and it's just like that. My neck hairs sizzle, and he says he sang to a seal just that morning, and it responded, which sounds right, because they use sonar, and I tell him this, and he says the seal told him something about his true love, Polly, you know, and he tips the penguin towards me, this man with the curious double voice who now wants to know if I listen to Bjork here in the cafe with the good cannoli and wall-to-wall ghosts, thrumming deep and low and plenty. Okay, this, I guess it's right here on my boat. Yeah, okay. In Northern California, if anybody doesn't know that. Okay. Extremely massive hot young stars. The internet has fallen in love with outer space again. The crisp images, further and colorful, make us talk about the multiverse, wonder if we were already doubling. But see here, it's Fog Appreciation Day, and I will sit by the window and watch it roll in over Mount Tam, billowing closer for me, without any need for imagination or mathematics. Okay. Just a ghost poem. That's kind of my brand. It's also an anaphora, which you'll be able to hear. And it's Taos, New Mexico-ish. Yeah, definitely. And the first line is the title. My ghost wants to make good use of her time, no matter it is endless and without reckon. My ghost wants to watch 80s movies because she loves the soundtracks, wants the huge hair, a ripped t-shirt, and a hot pink attitude. My ghost wants a big sloppy bowl of migas full of rice and beans with the fresh guac because we're real, but also a little skint. My ghost wants the Hatch green chilies in a rumpled paper bag bought roadside, then roasted in the backyard in an old tin drum. My ghost pinches my earlobe whenever some know-it-all tourist mispronounces our hometown. My ghost will gull at a margarita like a glass of water because it's that hot out and they have some forgetting to do. My ghost does not like being privy to secret information about my neighbor's boyfriend. My ghost seems to have sent some emails in the small hours, angry and drunk, to a man who made assumptions. My ghost holds up the word grief up over the page so long that it starts to levitate. Whoa, I have to make a decision here. All right, I'm going to try to slide 2 in. What do I do? Well, I'm going to read one. Maybe we won't get to the other one. Here's another 8-poem poem. Philly, just so I cover all the bases. Poem wearing basketball shorts and a hoodie. By the time the plane landed in Philly, Fetterman had been elected. The city abuzz, I order a huge soft pretzel and beer for dinner in a bar that used to be a different bar, and before that, the Mechanics Union. The pretzel arrives slung from a banana hook with 3 kinds of mustard, one being the cheap yellow stuff you get at Phillies games. I dip in and maybe say water instead of water, just to remind my tongue where I came from, before a speech coach squeezed the South Philly out of me, proudly stating, "Now you could be from anywhere," as if that were an accomplishment, and I believed him. When I go to leave the bar, it's late and pouring, and the barman brings a plastic laundry bin full of umbrellas. "Take one, they're orphans," he says, and rattles the basket at me. I close my eyes and pick something that feels abandoned and not merely lost. Surrounded by brick and smokers at midnight pickup games and more brick, those dropped consonants, the Philly schwa swirling around me like a familiar, I feel related to everyone who passes. Time, we're out. I even stopped pronouncing my consonants. I couldn't help it in the end of this poem, so it just comes right back. Thanks, everybody, and Sean, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much.
Next up, Yael.
Yeah, Yael. Valencia Aldana is a Caribbean Afro-Latinx writer and poet, known for her chapbook Aliens and the upcoming poetry collection Black Mestiza from University Press of Kentucky. This actually just won the University Press of Kentucky New Poetry and Prose Series Prize. Congratulations. Yael has also been recognized as a finalist for the AWP Kurt Brown Scholarship and was a semifinalist for the 2 Sylvia's Press Wilder Poetry Prize. Her work has graced publications like the Stone Coast Review, South Florida Poetry Journal, Cutbank Literary Journal. She is an associate editor at West Trade Review, a feedback editor at Craft Literary, and a guest editor at Frontier Poetry and Palette Poetry. She teaches creative writing at FIU and resides in South Florida. So we're all over the United States today, California, Michigan, and Florida. So Yael, if you are ready to step up to the mic, the spotlight is on you.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate being asked to be a part of this. And what makes it particularly sweet is that when you asked me, I had no upcoming publications, nothing was going on, but I was lucky enough that my chapbook Alien just dropped, and it's this is what I'll be reading from, and it's a really lovely book if you want to, lovely looking book if you want to check it out. So this chapbook is about relationships in across the board, friendships, mentors, husbands, ex-boyfriends. And a lot of the poems sound really romantic because I think we ascribe love primarily to a romantic association where it really spans the breadth of all different kinds of relationships. This first poem is for a friend of mine, and we have a very strange relationship. Pretty much we cannot stand each other, but somehow we have this tremendous affection for each other that we don't quite understand. So I wrote this poem for him on his birthday to try to wrap my mind around our relationship. For you, after Ada Limon, there was a time in the Pantheon, the time before quasars, the time before penumbras were invented, the time before souls, when we were twins clung together, brothers, sisters, who knows? But one skin, one gossamer bubble of thread, dark eye to dark eye, the residue adheres, sticky filaments on the wing. It winnows, it stretches thin as mylar. It is the most tapered kind of affection. So this one was published in Superstition Review, and I wrote it for my mentor. And it sounds very romantic, but it's not. And I hesitated for a solid year before I told her it was about her because it just sounded like I had a crush on her, which I didn't. But again, this is about a different type of love. And I wrote this because I had to give her some bad news. She'd helped me prepare for something, and someone was very unkind to me. And I didn't want to tell her because I knew it would hurt her. To watch her face fall, I am wounded. My washy, thin skin darkens with blood, frayed open, flesh ragged at the edges. I don't want to tell her, to show her, but she will ask. I can bear it alone, the weight of this upset. Knit the lesion back together before I see her. Continue the interlacing of fascia after I see her. Conceal the bruise, the sliced skin. But she will ask. I harrow and sear, watching her face crest and fall, watching her shining shadow, if only for a few minutes, till her face brightens, till her mouth dances to distract from my harm. Our love is this silent chafing. Bodily harm becomes invisible shadowing, barely darkened imperfection, a closing over that will smooth, return to unblemished perfection to all eyes but ours. Only us aware of the slight scar, lightly covered in hair, smoothing over her face that fell. She cannot forgive because it was me. I cannot forgive because it was her face that fell. She wants to go back, soothe with words as slim as apple chips, soothe with her rhythmic voice that rises and falls in waves. Our faces slick over, leaving only slight sharpening in the corner of the shields of our eyes, squinting, glinting black metal. She will say, it's all right, and not mean it. I will agree and not mean it. We will put our glossy heads together, draft new plans for unnamed streets. She will hold my hand tighter, which is the only good bit, until I'm ready to leave the hearth of her protection, sheath and armor. We will temper anew. Thank you. Now this poem, um, people love when I read this poem, but I have to give it a little bit of a preface. It's about my relationship with my ex-husband. And sometimes you're the asshole. And I was the asshole in that relationship. And I do have a degree in women, gender, and sexuality. And when I read this poem, sometimes I think they're going to come and take that degree away from me because I'm being a bad feminist in this poem, which you'll figure out pretty quickly. Alien poem number 12. And it's called Alien Poem because his nickname was Alien. You are the best person I have met. Not the strongest, but the best. The worst thing you ever did, I made you do. Drunk off our asses atop a 10-story apartment roof in Brooklyn. I command you to climb down the fire escape. Steal a tiny barbecue grill I see below. Game. You climb down. You call up. I can't make it up with the grill. Do it, I slur. Don't come up here without that fucking grill. I, confident in your athleticism. You return with the grill, our triumph, our token, our coup. You could have died 10 stories up, jumping between the fire escape and the roof ladder. You survived my drunken bullying. Maybe I'm the worst person I ever met. We take the tiny grill home. Is it really ours? We never use it. We giggle over it. Our triumph, our token, our coup. You are the best person I ever met. Not the strongest, but the best. I might be the worst person you have met. Am I your most dangerous ex? Would you be in danger if I reappeared? If I thought we could make it, I would take you back. I would Would you let me? I would storm into your new relationship, leave your girlfriend in shambles, fuck the feminist sisterhood. I would send her back home to her mother crying, back home to her best friend crying. Feminism means you need to be strong, so take it, and I will take him. I have been that bitch before, and I would be that bitch again. I would have taken the karma, and I would have taken you, but we wouldn't have made it. So I let you alone. So in one of the universe's karmic justice systems, I was the asshole with my ex-husband, and then someone who looked frighteningly like him came into my life, and he was the asshole. The most dangerous ex. They look like brothers, Alan, whose nickname is Alien, and Eric, whose nickname is E. Eric sent me a picture of himself that looks nothing like him. I meet him sitting at a downtown Fort Lauderdale bar, looking at me with Alien's face through E's brown eyes instead of Alien's blue. There are differences. E is taller. Alien has perfect teeth. E is 14 years younger, but 90% of them is the same. Twins, same body, same hair, almost the same face. It's frightening. E is the dangerous one. We together mere months, Alan and I together for 7 years. I drive away from E's rubber spewing gravel to countermand his drinking, his cocaine dipshits all over the house. But when E calls me 2 years hence, then 5 years hence, my heart swivels to resist him. Why? He's terrible. It's not that he reminds me of Alien, or maybe Alien reminds me of him. It's not because he's an ass. My phone is full of asshole exes. I don't bother to text back. This sticky stardust between us, stretching like albumin, binding us to a galaxy we have forgotten. The adult in me resists him admirably, while the brat in me wants to lick him like a lollipop. You wouldn't know how hard her adult heart beats, how her skin prickles when he puts his hand on her lower back, when she has lunch with E without telling her then, current now, recently ex-boyfriend. E is the hook, and I am the latch. This is the crux. Do you know what will happen? Have you ever fallen on sea-slick rocks? Let the ocean take you. Watch the safety of shore slide away. Maybe that's why he keeps coming back, like a turtle that returns to the beach where she was born. So this one is called Miami Map.